Hello, welcome to latest Harlan Suite video, and we'll do the classic talking over some deck lists as we just look for all the things that happened over the weekend. There were some awesome events. I think there was a 6K in Anaheim. There was Southside Gaming had an Infinity and a Set 9. And there was just loads of other bits as well. There was loads of stuff in Europe. Fortunate enough to talk to some German players who had some events, and there was some stuff in France as well, which means we just get like a ton of data, and we get to see like how week one panned out, or the first weekend of events panned out. And I will, just before I get into everything, because I know I will forget, in the Infinity event, I'm not really focusing on Infinity too much because it's just something that not like all the players really have to think about a lot. But in the finals of the Southside Gaming one, there was Kiwi Birds, which was awesome to see, and it was really amazing to watch the casters try and pronounce the deck name or try and think of any other name to call it, because it was their own concoction of Kiwi Birds. It had Vinny in it, which seemed like an awesome addition. I really hadn't thought about what new cards going forward we could put in Kiwi Birds to make it even better, but they had that in it. It was a lot of Amber Steel represented there, but it looks like that deck is really quite functional in certain rooms when you're playing Set 9, no, Infinity, sorry. So yeah, that seemed really cool to watch unfold, and maybe they just took a really good meta call on all of the Amber Steel that was going to be there, and it got all the way to the finals, so that was just awesome to see. But going into Set 9, and mainly talking about Set 9's decks today, because that's what most people are probably practicing for, with DLCs coming up, with bigger events. We've got a 1K that me and Ali will be casting at the end of the week, sorry, on Saturday. Will be the 6th of September, so watch out for that. I'll make sure to link everything, and that'll be awesome. But going into all the lists, there is, of course, I thought it was going to be 3 main contenders, but it seems like there's only real 2 decks to talk about. And before I go into those 2 main decks, I will mention that Sapphire Steel is still very alive. If you watch the Southside in-game stream, I can't remember which rounds it was, but Hector managed to be on stream twice with his like almost fully enchanted out deck here, Sapphire Steel Allies deck, and he's gone for the No Jasmine build, which a lot of people had suggested to me to be a pretty good idea, and I think it's really cool. It seems like the mulligan is just really go heavy on finding the Scar, and then setting up for the Scar to get like a huge like 12 card or whatever you can achieve card draw, and then just playing that entire hand out, and then maybe playing some docks to keep the engine going. But overall, the deck just looks really cool. So I didn't notice how many 1-drops there were, but there are 6 1-drops with Hook and what's his name, Happy in there. So there is some dwarf stuff in there. I don't know if maybe the mines went in and out of this list because there is Happy and Stock in there. But this looks really cool. Really cool build, and it seems like, yeah, you can play it definitely without the Jasmine line. It did have a fairly brutal game against Kendall on Blurple, where it did just seem like, the main out is that they can also exert the Scar and take it out, but maybe if you'd have played Pluto the turn prior, it looked like he was trying to set up for that, and maybe if they just don't have the Elsa, or they just don't have a way to remove the Scar, you can win. It seems like going on the play is a lot more favoured. So it seems like there's a lot of tweaking, a lot of working he can do there to get everything to be functional. So it seems definitely the deck is completely alive. The first round he played against a Ruby Amethyst, and they really had no out for the Scar, drawed like 12 cards off bursting a Tipo of Alice, and just ran over them. So it's really cool. It looks like there's a deck there that has a lot of work to it. Going on to the other lists, really, and before I go into the other lists, I thought I would just show you a meta report from the 15 case. I believe this is the Southside Gaming event. It is, and this is what the top cut looked like. If we look at the top 8 there, we can even look at further with the top 16. It looks like, yes, Blurple and Amethyst Steel sort of dominated everything. And of course, the other thing I said was Amber Steel was going to be in there. Amber Steel has popped up in different realms, but it looks like just Amber Steel having that such big target on its back, and the fact that it was like the predicted deck to win everything, because everyone was quite scared of Tiana. It just didn't do very well because everyone's always trying to gun for it and trying to get rid of it. I reckon every Blurple deck, every Amethyst Steel deck was always practiced and very teched for it. So they managed to just stomp it out of any way of climbing into the top cuts there. So yeah, we've ended up with basically just this fully purple dominated meta, which is, for good or bad, it is the way it is. Dumbo's very expensive, so the meta being dominated by this color is an interesting thing. And if you watch a lot of the games, though, I think it's the points I've tried to make, and if I haven't made them very clear on the channel, I am very sorry. But you have a lot of games, you have a lot of decks like, I think Sapphire Steel Allies is a good example, and Amber Steel Aggro as well, the Tiana, where, if Sapphire Steel Allies is going to do its Scar, burst something and draw 12 cards, discard 2, that's amazing. To set that up, you require Scar on board, maybe Alice to give the support buff, everything to be fine, them not to have aggroed you and won the game, them to not have removed Scar, them to not have done all these things. And the same with Amber Steel Aggro, it requires that, you can set up the Tiana and they don't have a way to answer it, they don't have a strength into the unknown, they don't have the components they need to remove it. And if you gave yourself 8 rounds, it's unlikely you're going to be able to achieve that throughout all of the rounds, unless you're running very hot, which, to be honest with you, in TCGs, running very hot is like a common phrase that some decks will just turn up to an event and just have an amazing day where they don't drop any games, all their ducks are in line and it works. And that's not an undoable thing. That is something that happens in card games. It's completely doable. But the Amethyst decks, what they bring is, because a lot of their cards say draw a card, you've got like Genie that does that. You've got, of course, Dock and Amber Steel, in Amethyst Steel, or I guess in Amber Steel as well. And you've got, you can scry with Visions in Blurple. You can play Finders Keepers. Amethyst Steel has the 1-drops that when they're removed, you've got like a Diablo, or you could even play the Kuzco when it's banished, you draw a card. They just effectively are more consistent. They will draw more cards. They will out-resource. They'll just do everything that they can do very consistent. So if you gave them enough games, it looks like Amethyst Steel would come out on top, or Amethyst in general, Amethyst Steel and Blurple will come out on top just because they're 2 more consistent decks. And you give them enough rounds, enough games, they will probably just overly have the higher win rate. Of course, that's not disputing the other decks. Like I'm saying, Amber Steel and Sapphire Steel and Ruby Amethyst and all those things, when they get to do their thing, it's really powerful. It's probably more powerful than what the consistent decks can do. But that's just kind of the way TCGs are. So it looks like we're looking at, I think, especially for DLC season, if we're all prepping for that, the Amethyst decks will just come out on top. And maybe right now, if you're looking to take it to the point where you want to win 12 rounds or whatever it is at the DLC, you might want to be looking at an Amethyst deck. And it's mad that they still call the Blurple items, because they haven't updated Dreamborn yet. And it's mad that it was ever called items, because Blurple only ever had one item, which was Borpsicle. But we're going to go into some lists here. This is Logan, who is Zenulus from Maelstrom, played in, I think it was a 72-person event. And this is the list. I'm very sorry if none of this is coming great through on your screens, what you can see, but hopefully this is zoomed in enough, and I'm just basically terrible at technical stuff. But I'm going to say, if it was like what we'd expect from Blurple, this 1-drop package is what a lot of decks are running. The 3 Basil, 3 Rafiki. I think the only one that I saw that wasn't on that was probably Kendall, which we can actually go into. It's not on this one, is it? I don't know if he's on Dream, but there he is. I think he was not on that. And the interesting thing about it, he had Rafiki and Royal Guard, but it seems like you have 2 1-drops. It's coming across quite the common thing for a lot of the Blurple decks right now. Just to combat that early decks that like Purple Steel, I think you can win that, but if they're going to just get away from it with a Mr. Arrow questing on 2, you kind of want something on the board that can remove that for yourself. But that looks like it's becoming quite the common feature. And the interesting, I'm going to keep talking about Kendall's list for a couple seconds here. The interesting thing is he went 3 Genies. He didn't have the Dumbos. He did tweet a couple times that he just couldn't source them. So it looks like he's gone for card draw in other places and used a Rider as a place filler card. But that does show you the power of Blurple. Even without the Dumbos, you can do very, very well with the deck. But yeah, the 3 Genies is the most interesting point for me, because it's just such a powerful card that wins you so many games. I'm assuming it's because the uninkable count was getting pretty high with the second star to the right. But yeah, going to talk about Zenulus' list here, because I think it's quite interesting. And then the rest of the stuff is very standard. You've got your Tipo, Sail, Vision, all the parts, Bell, Elsa, all the parts that we just expect to be in Blurple. We're seeing Iago counts go up and down on people's lists, and I'm going to keep comparing this to Zenulus. There's to Kendall's. There's 2 in the Kendall's one, and there is 3 in Zenulus's one. And I think the reason why is Iago's goes in and out of my list, but you kind of want Iago for something else, for Dumbo to combo with. You need to put an ample amount of evasions in the deck, but at this point, with Steel having its Steel removal package, and in Blurple lists, like pretty much all of them play 4x Hypnotic Strength, the way to use Iago effectively has just really diminished in this set. I still think it's a good card. If it's unanswered, it just sits on board and does like amazing trades for the rest of the day. But outside of that, it can just be not the best card to play right now. But I think with Dumbo, you need to start validating Dumbo by saying I'm going to have some evasions on the board that can combo off its effect. And again, in the mirror, if they don't have the hypnotic strength, it can just do amazing things. And even if they do, if you're on the play and you play an Iago out, it might start killing your hand, but it means that their turn 3 can't be, after they've ramped, can't be play a genie because you're just Elsa Exert and then take out that genie of your Iago. So it means they might have to hypnotic strength it, which means their 4 ink turn is a 2 ink play if they don't have anything else to do that other 2 ink. So I still think it's interesting. I think it still needs to float around in the meta, and it just validates that Dumbo a bit more. The Madam Mim Elephant, I think JD has cut it out of his list, or at least has for now. I'm not sure where he's at with Madam Elephants, but it seems another thing that's been common throughout the entire decks. And I think the 3/7 body and the ability to move 2 damage is amazing. Like, that's very good into all of the steel matchups. You'll find it a little bit weaker into maybe the mirrors or maybe the green blue. Those things you might find it a bit weaker into, of course. And then into I'm just saying, sorry, the body and the effect, the 3/7 and the move 2 damage, but bouncing something back to your hand is actually really quite effective, and I think we've forgotten about it because Madam Mim Fox, Madam Mim Snake was removed from the game. But the ability to bounce, an Elsa back to your hand, or a Hades, or even a Genie to protect it, or whatever, or even bouncing a Tipo just to ink the Tipo the next turn, is so good in a set where you're not drawing as many cards. So getting to bounce them back is just really quite a powerful thing right now. Of course, it being a 4 cost makes it a bit more expensive, and it can not be the thing that you wanted to do that turn, and it might take up a lot of your ink usage on that turn. But just the ability to bounce things back is just really quite strong, and I've been quite liking the card, and I'm probably going to stick around with it. And yeah, even in this later stages, we got to watch Kendall. He was bouncing Hades back. I think in the end he managed to Hades 6 times after finding 4 of them and then bouncing one twice. So you can do that. And if you're both in a Sapphire mirror or you're both inking each other's stuff, it's not unfeasible to be doing like 11 ink turns or 12 ink or whatever ridiculous ink turns. Those are very doable things. So I quite like the elephant right now. And TikTok as well, it seems to be one that's in there. And it's just crazy that this like almost vanilla character, it has an evasion on it and that's about it, is so relevant. And it is, I found that if I'm losing the evasion war, which, getting your evasions to stick and making sure your opponent can't remove them, that's the evasion war in a nutshell. TikTok can just really change all of that up, because you can play it down and it's going to take out a genie and it's still going to have 5 health on it. It'll probably take out an Elsa, because the Elsa will most likely have 1 damage, like 1 damage minimum, because it's exerted and it's probably hit something. You can use it with Bell. It's just all round just seems quite a strong card, really. So I've been really liking the TikTok in the Blurple lists. And on top of that, the Xenius is the most different thing compared to what all these other lists have is the Baymax. And the Baymax is just quite cool. I definitely want to run this at locals to test it out. And I kind of get it. Like, you've just got a lot of floating damage around for Bell. And if you've really got nothing to move the damage over with, you can just heal and get 2 lore. And I guess on the draw as well, when you're at a point where you maybe are behind on lore and you need to catch up, you need to do some trades, and we are very much in a challenge based meta. Removal is less than it's ever been. There's no Zeus, be prepared, Sisus. Only the little Sisus around anymore. So challenging is quite common, so there's always just damage lingering on the boards, and once you've established it, it's that you have to remove this 2/6, otherwise I'll always be running into your things, then healing them up and making it so they're out of snapback range. I don't know, I'm struggling to say that word. I'm too excited to talk about Baymax. You can do something like Bell can take out a 2 strength thing, and then you heal the Baymax, and that means that their Calhoun can't take it out because it will be back to being a 4/4, and you can just do loads of fun stuff like that. So I think it's very interesting to be in there. It's almost like spicy enough tech that I probably would have thought about just saving it until DLC season comes around and then Baymax healing for game at some point. And the deck doesn't really have too much reach. Dumbo, in a sense, can be reach, but everything needs to be dried for it to work, so it's not really reach, let's be honest. It's just non-questing lore. So Baymax being able to just find you 2 lore out of nowhere is pretty cool, and close the gaps on people. So altogether, just a really cool list, and I think a lot of that is what we're going to see as like core Blurple for now. And if we look back at Kendall's, the only other difference I wanted to mention was second star to right. If you're like anyone who's just wanting to play Blurple this set, and the minute you saw him draw, like, I think he did it twice, I think, and then played Visions. This was on the Southside Gaming stream. So he drew like 10 cards and then scryed 3 times. So, he got to see about 25 cards of his deck. He drew 10 of them and got to pick 3 more cards. So it seemed really mirror breaking, very Sapphire mirror breaking. I managed to practice some games against Ali, and it was like we're in a stalemate where, we're top decking. I top deck it. Of course, you have to have the bodies on board to sing it, but I luckily had a TikTok, and I think it was an Elsa, sing it, scry, find a removal, and then just win the game from there on out. So it seems like an interesting card, very fun card. I don't know if I can put it in the win more category yet, because drawing 5 cards in stalemates is also really, really good. And it's not very hard to achieve. I was very surprised how easily I could achieve it, because, if you have a TikTok set up with pretty much any of these other things besides Rafiki, Royal Guard, or Tipo, any of these other characters on board as well, and it can sing it together. You can sing it together with the Hades and a Rider as well. In most likely, you played Hades, locked something out, and it's also, if you don't have anything on board, you probably lost that game anyway. You didn't lose because you top decked second star to the right. You lost because you'd lost board. I think is another interesting thing to talk about with the card. So I think it's one that's going to be thought about. It kind of reminds me of the end of just before Ruby Amethyst Shark became a thing, maybe around Seattle DLC time. A lot of people were teching in Finders Keepers, and I remember talking to Kendall, and he said you kind of lost the mirror if you didn't play Finders Keepers. Like, you didn't really want to play that card, but you lost the mirror if you didn't play it. Of course, it ended up being a very common card in the Shark decks, but that was back when it was a bit more of the bounce tech sort of stuff that used to play in Ruby Amethyst. So I kind of like Second Stars to the Right. I've been playing it. I don't know if it sticks in my list. It is in my list currently for a lot of fun. And again, like I say, it's not far off the standard list. The Scrooge is very easily justified. It's a decent body. It's pretty good for aggro, and it also quests for 2, so it's useful in the other matchups as well. Can trade up nicely with things like Bell if they get littered on the board, or pretty much anything, and it can 1/1 the if your opponent plays a Scrooge, like against a green blue. So I don't think it's too much to talk about the list here. Besides the everybody's got a weakness, I think people are still in debate between everybody's got a weakness and Finders Keepers, or what you can do is just play both. And I can't remember where this event is from. I think it is from somewhere in the, I'm going to say somewhere in the US. Yes, it's the Enchanted Tour. It's somewhere in, I think it's in Austria. It's the Rare Hunters store. So they've gone with both of the cards, and to be honest with you, not bad. And sometimes everybody's got a weakness has been this strange just way to remove something off the board. It can be crowd control, it can be draw power. I've never seen it used to great effect, but I kind of like it, and it's what card I've had to be thinking about, and just damage counters move in general. If I've seen my opponent is on a purple deck and they've got 5 characters wide of all 1 damage on, I'm always having to think about, are they just setting up for everybody's got a weakness, or if they top deck it, can they take advantage of it, or do they have it in their hand? So I think it's a card to think about. I'd be surprised if it doesn't just get phased out, and in return for other consistent cards, because of course it needs to have the damage on the characters already. And it can't just be damage built up on one character. It needs to be damage built up on everything. And if you're choosing to quest rather than trade, you don't build up damage. And yeah, I've seen a lot of times where it's just not being that useful for players. When it is useful, it's great. Getting around resist is great. Moving it all to a Rhino is really awesome. So I think it has a place, but I'd be surprised if people don't phase it out for just more consistent cards. I think a lot of people sometimes will justify things because they can be just inkable. This can just be inkable, but if it can just be inkable, it could be any card that's inkable and maybe a bit more consistent. But interesting card. I think you've definitely got to be thinking about it in every game you play. And this player has done better than I have this weekend, so because I didn't play any events. So everybody's got a weakness is a cool card. Take my points how you want, really. I don't mean to offend. And this is a really cool list. I think this is this Bivens list, or no, it's a player called Diego who won the Southside Gaming event, and it looked quite strong into the Blurple decks. And it's kind of interesting, the way the meta is sort of supposed to be unraveling is that Purple Steel kind of beats the Amber Steel and beats all the other like decks that are trying to so Amber still kind of beats the decks that are trying to have fun because it just aggroes them. All the different red greens and stuff like that. It doesn't really beat green blue, but it seems to beat a lot of the decks that could be in the meta, but they're kind of kept out by it. Purple steel is supposed to kind of beat the amber steel, and then Blurple is supposed to beat the purple steel, and then of course Blurple would lose the amber steel, and all of these things. That's supposed to be how it works out. But I've had a lot of people say they've had great success with purple steel into Blurple, which is just awesome to hear that maybe the meta is a bit more diverse than that. They get to resource quite a lot. This Treasure Guardian card seems quite interesting because, in the end, Blurple is purple steel with cards like a Giant Cobra and Palace Guard is ending up running a lot of illusions, and then you throw some Rajas in there as well, and it's likely you have played one the turn prior, so you can get some benefit from the Treasure Guardian. You saw a lot of people use Dolores because they were just taking advantage of their opponents had something sideways, but I guess in a meta where some games will be stalemates where nothing is turned sideways because we're waiting for that turn to like go in and do our trades or waiting for the Elsa to exert, it kind of makes more sense to play the Treasure Guardian because it's a more likely common thing that's going to be happening to the board state. So that's been pretty cool. You just get a lot of reach in here with the White Rose and the Giant Cobra. You can play some really fun stuff with the Madam Mim into the Steel Genie to fight theirs. And then the Bell move damage. Ali built a list with like 4 bells in, like every time as Blurple. I forgot about it. And they were able to do a really good trade, then play Doc, and then just go really wide. And it was like, oh god, I keep forgetting and I keep misplaying into it. I think the Jasmine is a card people are trying right now at the start of the set, just because it's a new card and we don't really know the limits of the set yet, and it seems pretty good. It seems whenever I've played against it is no one really wants to take the discard to get the attack buff, but it's always that threatening thing of I can't quest my genie right now because you've got a 6/7 technically waiting on the other turn, waiting to remove it, so it does lock boards down. It seems pretty good for that, but once it's turned sideways, it seems it could be fairly dealt with, and as a 5 cost it's kind of expensive to use, but I do like it. I think maybe Sapphire Steel could utilize the card a bit more because they can ramp into it and lock down a genie, but would they want to take the discard? Probably not. That's the only thing, is losing one card for Challenger +3 is not always the best thing for you to be doing, but overall the deck, of course, again, has done better than mine, so my opinions are always my opinions and I don't know how valid they are really. It seems pretty good, and I guess the way I've seen Purple Steel effectively beat the Blurple is that they can just go wider, quicker, resource a lot more. A lot of these cards will just positively increase card draw. If you can get the Dumbo untouched, you can start getting card draws from Diablo. Maybe, if you play the Steel Genie into the Dumbo, you can still get the card draw off the Genie. And if they ever try and, Elsa buff and take out your Dumbo, you have some ways to fight back with your Genie. And then you can move damage with Bell if you maybe played more than one copy, but one seems to also be fine. Maybe don't want too much on the top end because you don't want to dock into like a couple 5-drops and then have nothing else to play that turn, or nothing else to really do with that turn if you're preying on the dock to give you more options. Overall, it seems really cool, and again, I think there's some cards in there that are being tested, but the Treasure Guardian and the Illusion stuff's pretty great, and I like the Madam Mim 2-drop. I really do like that card. I'm hoping people are not touching it, because I've also played against a lot of Ruby Amethyst that run the Lumiere, and the strangest thing about that is, like, you think I can just Elsa exert and remove that, but because you're using Elsa to exert like genies and other cards, it just never gets removed. It just sits there. You never really want to invest too much removal into it. They're never going to quest with it, and so they both seem pretty strong cards right now, and making things like Captain Hook or Calhoun being able to take out daisies, and like say Genie take out the purple Genie, and on top of that Elsa exert, and she's attacking now for 3 is pretty good. Like, she can take out Dumbos, like all those things just seem pretty good, and she just sort of sits on the board and as a menace. She's maybe a bit stronger than the Lumiere because, as I say, Elsa, if you really wanted to, you could Elsa exert it and take it out, whereas this you need to Elsa exert and find that 1 extra damage, or maybe have a Rafiki set up to hit it. But overall, I really like the Madam Mim in there. I mentioned that you can get some card draw from the Dumbo. I'm not too certain about Dumbo being in the purple steels. It seems a lot better Purple Steel players than myself. I'm really not a Purple Steel player. I leave all of those games to Ali whenever Purple Steel is played in the house. But it just feels like maybe because you don't play at this high ink count, getting Dumbo set up and getting some value off it is not great, where maybe you just prefer to be playing something else because Dumbo is this high value target that will get focused in on, whereas maybe if you played a low value target, it might just stick longer. I don't know. But it's interesting that the two top decks are both utilizing Dumbo quite a bit. Of course, I've seen more Purple Steel lists not use Dumbo than I have seen it, and then all my Blurple lists besides Kendall's, I think have all used Dumbo. So we've got this meta where week one, like Amber Steel was the big target, and then Purple Steel kind of went in and pushed it out of the meta, and then Blurple kind of has a good game into Purple Steel, or a seemingly good game into Purple Steel, so it kind of rises to the top there in the end. So that's kind of where it's at. Of course, the next weekend of games, people have this information, people net deck. There'll be a lot of people going, well, I'll just bring Blurple because I think it's a good call, it seems to be winning a lot, or I'll bring Purple Steel. And then you have the people who go one step further and go, well, how do I beat that? I'm going to build something that beats that. And that could involve decks outside of these color combos, finding edges like those matchups and finding edges to the meta to try and come out on top. But for myself personally, of course, I'm going to finish it off with the list that I've been working on. And I've just called it or just listen to JDR because half the time I don't know what I'm talking about. It's so new in the meta. I'm just trying a lot of cards. All of this is still very much in testing realm. Like, none of this, I think, should be taken at 100% face value. There's cards in there I already know that I kind of want to drop. Like, I think the Donald Duck is on the cutting board for me, but there's enough room to like test. There's enough time between now and a major event that I have time to put more prototype lists up and talk about them instead. But it's kind of just in the combination of what we've seen on every other list. I'm pretty sure it's maybe 1 or 2 card different from some of the lists that I've posted or we looked at today. I'm pretty sure it will be because that's how these top meta decks will end up forming. But it feels like you get a lot of everything in there. I'm fully in on sort of Madam Mim being quite a useful card. TikTok being just really beefy boy who can trade up with everything and then combo a bell. I just love that as well. And the ACOS Ellis has been a card that basically is like, I've always said that I won't play Blurple if that card becomes viable, and then now that I also didn't own any as well, but now that you can pack them in set 9 and we've gone through so many boxes of set 9, I managed to get some and I put it in there, and yeah, you can do some really amazing things where your opponent's racing ahead. They're just saying, look, you're questing for 4 and I'm questing for 6, or you're questing for 4, I'm questing for 4, and I'm already ahead on lore, so I'm going to win. You know, you keep full questing, then you freeze 2 for a turn and say, well, now I'm going to quest for 7 because I've got another 3 quester. And if you don't deal with my board, I know you haven't been dealing with my board because you've just been questing and playing off the top every turn. You can do some crazy stuff with it. The kind of downside is we're playing more uninks in the deck, and that can be a bit tricky. I've actually gone to 12 right now in testing, which, to be fair, I've maybe bricked once or twice, and it doesn't feel too bad, but 12 is not a number I really want to be at with Blurple. We've been trying Second Star to the Right, and it just generally is a fun card. I think maybe because in the past sets we've had so much card draw, just to go to having barely any card draw to now playing a card that says draw 5, and it's just a base draw 5. Your opponent doesn't get any value from that as well. The only negative is 2 things have to be exerted. But, you know, with a bunch of the vanilla bodies, like if you have a TikTok and a Iago or Madam Mim Elephant, you know, that's, you're just losing 2 lore in a sense, or 2 trades on the board for 5 cards, which I think is pretty valid. So it's been very fun. Again, I think that probably will just get removed to be a Finders Keepers, or maybe some other way to scry the deck, or maybe just consistent buffing up the other slots in the deck, like the Iagos or Madam Mims or TikToks or something like that. So I can definitely see them coming out of the list as well. But overall, I'd say it's just been enjoying all the other cards that are in the set right now and kind of building something that I think is pretty fun. All of it in testing though, and I keep reminding myself and keep saying that on this video, I don't know why. But yeah, Blurple has been the list I'm putting most time into. I've also said it, I think in my mind as well, I've been enjoying it the most. Amber Steel was the deck I really wanted to run with this set, but it just felt like there's a complete flaw to it, and then seeing that it can be counted so heavily that it's not even really represented in top 8s besides maybe 1 or 2 top 8 finishes has really pushed my mind off trying to play that deck to a high enough level to get DLC tops with it. So Blurple is sort of where I've been at, and I know that's that thing of everyone's joining the masses of Blurple, but I think it's really your choice is hard between Blurple or Purple Steel right now. I'm in a lot of different testing groups. There is, of course, a lot of spice and a lot of interesting lists that are floating out there. There's a lot of stuff with Powerline. There's a lot of green yellow stuff going around, and we always see green blue as like being tested. I think there was a good represent. I think there was 7 green blues, but they were all very spicy in different lists. I think you can build a way that green blue is very troublesome for Blurple. You can build it in a way that's very troublesome for aggro. I don't think you can build it in a way that's good for both those matchups, but you can, you have different options there. So right now I'm just kind of being the meta sheep, which I don't feel too bad for because I was on Blurple last set. But yeah, this is the deck I'm putting the most time into. And of course, Purple Steel, Sapphire Steel Allies is the one I've always got floating around that I'm working on right over on the Metafy channel. So I'm going to end it there because otherwise it's just going to be more rambling about card games, which I love to do, but the video's just gone over 30 minutes. So thank you everyone for listening.